So today we're going to look at the arrest and the trial of Jesus. But we are going to look at it from an historical perspective, not a theological perspective. So what we're going to be asking is, what really happened based on the evidence that we have? So for all the examples of the synoptic gospels and Gospel of John being different, there is some significant areas where they're exactly the same. All of the gospels, in regard to their timelines, in regard to what happened, essentially agree as to the passion of Jesus. The essential details are all the same in each of the gospels. We're going to start by looking at the arrest of Jesus. Now, all the Gospels agree that Jesus was arrested in what is sometimes referred to as the Garden of Gethsemane, sometimes it's referred to as the Mount of Olives. Essentially, it's the same place. It's the area outside of Jerusalem, outside the walls of Jerusalem, just below the temple, where there was a garden. And it's there that Jesus was arrested. Why he was arrested here? Not really sure, but most likely that's where they stayed. Jerusalem was very crowded during Passover time, so there was no place for them to stay. Most people lived and slept out in the open. There wasn't a whole lot of rain. It's the springtime of the year, so the weather would have been fairly nice, so they would have slept outside. The garden outside the walls was a perfect place to stay. So the garden would have been a perfect place for them to stay. Now, I've got a little garden here that I've started. It's not the Garden of Gethsemane, but hey, it's something. So the first question, historically speaking, is why was Jesus arrested and executed? Let me first of all clarify a misconception. Jesus was not arrested by the Romans. Jesus was arrested by the Jewish authorities. All the Gospels agree on this. So that's the first misconception. So if the Jewish authorities arrested Jesus, what is it that Jesus did that got the Jewish authorities so upset that they felt like they had to arrest him? The answer to that is actually fairly simple because the Gospels actually tell us. All the Gospels agree. What got the attention of the temple authorities is when Jesus directly challenged them. And he did a prophetic act. And he went in and he overturned the tables and the booths of the money changers and those who were selling things within the temple. And he declared that the temple was intended to be a house of prayer, not a marketplace. By doing this, he directly attacked the economic stability of the temple priest. People are generally tolerant of others until they challenge their ability to make money. And this is exactly what Jesus did. When Jesus challenged their livelihood and their power, he crossed a line, and then it was time that he was gotten rid of. So Jesus wasn't arrested for any particular religious reasons. He was arrested for economic reasons and because he challenged the power of those in authority. Up until this time, there's no real historical evidence in the Gospels that the religious authorities in Jerusalem were even aware of who Jesus is. It's only after he directly challenged them that they became aware of him and they realized he was dangerous and they realized that he had to be gotten rid of. In fact, we know that the Jewish authorities didn't really know who Jesus was. They didn't recognize who Jesus was. They couldn't point him out because they needed Judas to actually say, this is Jesus. When they come to arrest him, Judas arranges a sign and he says, the one whom I will kiss is the one. arrest him. So the Jewish authorities didn't really know what Jesus looked like. The high priest at the time of Jesus was a man named Caiaphas. He was from a wealthy family in Jerusalem, and they purchased the right to be the high priest. And so the temple priest, along with the high priest, worked with the Romans to maintain their authority over the temple and to ensure that no one got out of line. Anyone who would have threatened the priestly family's livelihood and the stability of the Roman rule over Judea would have been gotten rid of quickly. By challenging the temple authorities, Jesus threatened this stability and threatened the survival of Judea, and therefore they would have gotten rid of him quickly.
Fools, you have no perception. The stakes we are gambling are frighteningly high. We must crush him completely. So like done before him, this Jesus must die. For the sake of the nation, this Jesus must die. Must die, must die, this Jesus must die. So like John before him, this Jesus must die. Must die, must die, this Jesus must die.
Why did Judas betray Jesus? Sadly, it seems that it was simply for money. Judas was paid 30 pieces of silver. It has been suggested that Judas was trying to get the people upset and begin a revolution against the temple and the Romans. But there really is nothing in the Gospels to support this. The Gospels indicate that Jesus was arrested, convicted, and executed very quickly. Most likely, this is exactly what happened. An important point to remember here is that it was the Feast of Passover. The population of Jerusalem during Passover essentially tripled in size, so there were a lot of people in an overcrowded city. The religious and national fervor of the people also ran high during the religious festival. So anyone who tapped into this religious fervor could cause a riot and cause a problem for the Romans. Jesus' actions in the temple were just such an event, and the Romans would not have wanted to risk any type of riot that could lead to a semi-revolt. So the minute Jesus would have been brought to their attention by the temple authorities, they would have killed him quickly, if for no other reason than to make of him an example. The Roman governor at the time, Pontius Pilate, we know some things about him from other historical texts besides the Gospel. We know that Pontius Pilate was not a tolerant man. He was hard and he was cruel. So when Jesus would have been brought before him, if Jesus even was brought before Pilate, the trial would have been very quick. They would have told Pilate that he was a troublemaker, and Pilate simply would have given the order to have him executed without any question, without any hesitation. That's a look at the historical side of Jesus' arrest and his trial. Now, the Gospels, though, are not an historical document. Gospels are a theological document. So tomorrow, we're going to look at his trial and his execution from a theological perspective. What do the Gospels actually want us to know about Jesus as the Messiah, as the Christ, And what does the Passion narrative tell us? God bless. I will see you tomorrow.